The cold breath of winter drifts across the ancient forests. Snow settles softly on pine branches, and the long nights bring with them a time of reflection and ritual. In the quiet of this frozen season, our ancestors found ways to honor the turning of the year, to celebrate survival, and to invite the returning sun. As you rest here, listening, imagine yourself long ago, wrapped in fur and wool, gathered beside a hearth's glow, far from the noise of modern life. Now is the stillness before dawn, the calm before light returns. Across Europe and beyond, early pagan communities marked this season with reverence. The time around the winter solstice, the shortest day and longest night of the year, held deep meaning. It was known by many names. In Scandinavia, Yule or Jul; among the Celts, a festival of rebirth; and in old Roman lands, Saturnalia, the celebration of the god of agriculture. These ancient rituals varied, yet they shared one truth: recognition of life and light enduring, even in the heart of darkness. In northern lands, the Norse people would bring evergreen branches into their homes, symbols of life that never faded with the cold. It is said they burned great Yule logs, sometimes enormous trees fed slowly into the hearth, to keep the fire burning through the longest night. Ashes from these sacred fires were saved and scattered the following year over the fields, to bless the soil and ensure a fertile spring. As sparks rose into the air, they were believed to carry prayers to the gods, to Odin, to Frigg, and to the unseen spirits of winter. In Celtic traditions, winter was a time to honor the Holly King and the Oak King, two ancient figures representing the cycle of death and rebirth. The Holly King ruled over the waning year from midsummer to Yule, and on the solstice night, the Oak King would rise again, symbolizing the return of light, of growth, of renewal. People decorated their homes with holly for protection, hanging sprigs near windows and doorways to ward off wandering spirits drawn by the long, dark nights. To the east, within the heart of ancient Rome, celebrations took shape very differently, but bore the same theme of light and joy amidst darkness. Saturnalia began as a festival for the god Saturn, bringer of abundance and plenty. During these days, social order paused. Masters served their servants, gifts were exchanged freely, and laughter filled the streets. Candles, surya, were lit and offered in honor of the returning sun. Whether in temples, forest groves, or the glow of a simple fire, people felt a connection to something larger, a rhythm that bound their lives to the earth, to the stars, and to the slow turning of the seasons. Even in the coldest night, there was always a promise of warmth to come. In parts of old Germany, families gathered for midwinter feasts, known as Modernite or Mother's Night. It was a sacred evening dedicated to the dessert, the protective feminine spirits and ancestral mothers said to guard the household. Food and drink were left out in offering, just as milk and bread were placed at the threshold for unseen guests. Elves, gods, or ancestors traveling between worlds on the longest night of the year. All across these lands, winter rituals centered on gratitude, respect, and a deep sense of connection. Fires burned not only for warmth, but to remind the community of the eternal flame, the spark of life that must be guarded through winter's darkness. And tonight, as you listen, let your mind wander there to snow-covered hills where candlelight flickers through the trees, to the scent of pine and smoke, to the quiet footsteps of people who looked up at the same stars, felt the same chill, and found comfort in ceremony. Each ritual was a story of loss and renewal, of the earth's sleeping yet living soul. They believed that winter was not death, but rest, a sacred pause before the cycle turned again. Breathe in and breathe out, as the ancients once did around their sacred fires. The ice will thaw. To the east, within the heart of ancient Rome, celebrations took shape very differently, but bore the same theme of light and joy amidst darkness. Saturnalia began as a festival for the god Saturn, bringer of abundance and plenty. During these days, social order paused. Masters served their servants, gifts were exchanged freely, and laughter filled the streets. Candles, surya, were lit and offered in honor of the returning sun. Whether in temples, forest groves, or the glow of a simple fire, people felt a connection to something larger, a rhythm that bound their lives to the earth, to the stars, and to the slow turning of the seasons. Even in the coldest night, there was always a promise of warmth to come. In parts of old Germany, families gathered for midwinter feasts, known as Madrennight or Mother's Night. It was a sacred evening dedicated to the desert, the protective feminine spirits and ancestral mothers said to guard the household. Food and drink were left out in offering, just as milk and bread were placed at the threshold for unseen guests. Elves, gods, or ancestors traveling between worlds on the longest night of the year. All across these lands, winter rituals centered on gratitude, respect, and a deep sense of connection. Fires burned not only for warmth, but to remind the community of the eternal flame, a spark of life that must be guarded through winter's darkness. And tonight, as you listen, let your mind wander there to snow-covered hills where candlelight flickers through the trees, to the scent of pine and smoke, to the quiet footsteps of people who looked up at the same stars, felt the same chill, and found comfort in ceremony. Each ritual was a story of loss and renewal, of the earth's sleeping yet living soul. They believed that winter was not death, but rest, a sacred pause before the cycle turned again. Breathe in and breathe out, as the ancients once did around their sacred fires. The ice will thaw. To the east, within the heart of ancient Rome, celebrations took shape very differently, but bore the same theme of light and joy amidst darkness. Saturnalia began as a festival for the god Saturn, bringer of abundance and plenty. During these days, social order paused. Masters served their servants, gifts were exchanged freely, and laughter filled the streets. Candles, surya, were lit and offered in honor of the returning sun. Whether in temples, forest groves, or the glow of a simple fire, people felt a connection to something larger, a rhythm that bound their lives to the earth, to the stars, and to the slow turning of the seasons. Even in the coldest night, there was always a promise of warmth to come. In parts of old Germany, families gathered for midwinter feasts, known as Madrennight or Mother's Night. It was a sacred evening dedicated to the desert, the protective feminine spirits and ancestral mothers said to guard the household. Food and drink were left out in offering, just as milk and bread were placed at the threshold for unseen guests. Elves, gods, or ancestors traveling between worlds on the longest night of the year. All across these lands, winter rituals centered on gratitude, respect, and a deep sense of connection. Fires burned not only for warmth, but to remind the community of the eternal flame, a spark of life that must be guarded through winter's darkness. And tonight, as you listen, let your mind wander there to snow-covered hills where candlelight flickers through the trees, to the scent of pine and smoke, to the quiet footsteps of people who looked up at the same stars, felt the same chill, and found comfort in ceremony. Each ritual was a story of loss and renewal, of the earth's sleeping yet living soul. They believed that winter was not death, but rest, a sacred pause before the cycle turned again. Breathe in and breathe out, as the ancients once did around their sacred fires. The ice will thaw, the light will return, and for now, there is only peace, peace of the longest night. At the edge of this night, our ancestors waited and watched, trusting in the balance of the world, knowing light would always overcome darkness. And as they drifted into dreams, They carried with them that promise of new beginnings waiting beneath the snow. Sleep now within the hush of winter's veil. Outside, frost glitters on bare branches, and the world rests in its quiet breathing. We drift further into the stories of winter, the ancient ways found in distant lands, where myth and memory intertwined. Far to the east, among the Slavic peoples, the coming of winter was once met with a beautiful mix of reverence and fear. The solstice marked the victory of the newborn sun, called Kalida. On this night, villagers sang from door to door, carrying torches or candles, spreading blessings for warmth and food to last the season. In time, these songs, Koladari, would echo through centuries, evolving into the familiar practice of caroling. But long before that, they were incantations, little spells of goodwill carried on breath and music, gentle chimes. To honor the rebirth of the sun, fires were lit at crossroads, meeting points for spirits and travelers alike. The flames were said to purify the land, driving away the frost that threatened crops and life. Sometimes effigies of darkness or winter spirits were burned, their ashes scattered on frozen soil or offered to the wind. In some Slavic tales, Morana, the goddess of winter and death, was the silent queen of the cold months. Villagers would craft her likeness from straw, dress her in white cloth, and later, as light began to return, cast her into rivers or burn her, symbolizing the end of winter's rule. But on the deepest nights, she was honored, not feared, for even death, the old one said, is a teacher of patience. Every ending carries the seed of a beginning. Further north, across the Baltic lands, in what is now Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, winter solstice was called Kushios or Kalidos. Families gathered to share a meal of symbolic dishes, often 12, one for each month of the year. There was no meat, no loud voices, no fire blazing, only candlelight and quiet gratitude. Straw was spread beneath the tablecloth to honor the spirits of ancestors, inviting them to join the feast in warmth and peace. The meal ended with the gentle lighting of a small log, a newborn fire to welcome the reborn sun. These rituals were softly practical, yet profoundly spiritual. Where life was bound to the rhythm of the earth, every small act, sweeping the hearth, hanging a sprig of greenery, leaving out bread, held cosmic meaning. Through them, the people wove hope into the long nights. They believed that kindness and remembering the dead kept misfortune at bay. And so they whispered their prayers into the winter air, offerings of peace for themselves, for their ancestors, and for the land itself. Now follow the western winds across the sea to the mist-covered isles of the Celts, to Ireland, Scotland, and the rugged lands of Britannia. Here, the midwinter festival was known simply as Alban Ardhan, the Light of Arthur, one of the 8 Sabbats of the Celtic Wheel of the Year. It was the time when the Druidic fires burned brightest. Stone circles like Stonehenge and Newgrange were positioned so that the solstice sun would pierce their inner chambers, a design so precise it can still be witnessed thousands of years later. As the dawn light slipped through narrow passages to kiss the ancient stones, people believed the sun god had been reborn, his light returning to banish the shadows. They greeted that dawn with offerings of milk, honey, and nuts, gifts to the earth, to the gods, and to one another. For the Celts, time moved in endless circles. Every death came with promise of renewal. Winter was sacred, not a season to escape, but one to honor. The land slept, but its spirit listened. Many would light candles at windows to guide travelers, both living and ghostly, through the darkness. Others hung mistletoe, believed to carry divine life, even when trees were bare, a sacred link between heaven and earth. Kissing beneath it was once an act of blessing, exchanging peace and life itself. And so, from frozen forests to quiet stone circles, from firelight to candles glow, these pagan winter rituals shared a single heart, belief in continuity, that no matter how dark or cold the night becomes, the sun and life always return. Now, as you lie still, imagine the endless chain of winters that came before you. The voices singing beneath stars long gone, the scent of pine smoke drifting through time. Your breath meets theirs, across the ages, through ancient languages, through frozen nights. In the hush of this moment, feel that continuum within you, the calm patience of earth asleep beneath snow, the promise of dawn, quietly waiting beyond the horizon. Close your eyes and rest with them, the ancient ones who waited for the light, listening to the heartbeat of winter. The coldest nights of the year were never simply endured. They were lived with meaning. Ancient peoples saw winter not as absence, but as preparation. It was a sacred pause between endings and beginnings. In nearly every pagan culture, winter carried the whisper of rebirth, the old sun dying and the new sun's flame awakening once more. To shepherd that renewal, rituals filled the darkness with light, sound, scent, and prayer. In Celtic lands, the Druids believed the world's life force moved in cycles of balance. At the winter solstice, this balance shifted, darkness began to wane, and light was reborn. Priests would climb hilltops before dawn, watching for the sun's return. When the first rays touched the horizon, they raised evergreen branches and sang blessings to the sky. The evergreen, oak, holly, pine, symbolized the soul's endurance through hardship. At home, families decorated with ivy and mistletoe, both sacred plants. Ivy clung, showing faithfulness and resilience, while mistletoe was seen as soul light, a bridge between earth and divine. It was said only Druids could cut it, and only using a golden sickle before it touched the ground. In Norse tradition, winter was the domain of reflection and hospitality. During Yule, families gathered for 13 nights, each representing one of the cycles of the year. They lit Yule fires, carved runes of protection, and shared ale in ritual toasts called sumbles, each cup raised to honor the gods, the ancestors, and one's own fate. Offerings were set outside: bread, meat, multi-grain cakes, tokens for wandering spirits, warriors, and gods traveling through the long night. Many believed Odin himself rode across the sky during the wild hunt, leading a host of spectral riders, searching the earth for lost souls. To avoid drawing his attention, one left gifts of food or hay, offerings that later evolved into the custom of leaving treats for winter visitors, or centuries later for St. Nicholas. Among Slavic peoples, the winter solstice was also deeply spiritual. They believed this was when the boundary between the living and the dead thinned. Families invited ancestors into their homes through ritual meals. Before eating, a small portion of every dish, honey cake, porridge, poppy seeds, was set aside for the spirits. Fires burned in hearths all night, ensuring that the ancestors would not wander cold through the dark. The figure of dead Moros, Grandfather Frost, emerged from these old traditions, a godlike being who ruled over snow and time, bringing both challenge and blessing. His domain was wintry power, yet he was also a bringer of gifts, a guardian of moral balance, rewarding kindness and humility. In Baltic lands, the solstice night was sacred to the sun goddess Sol, who was said to pause her chariot in the far north before riding back towards spring. Women wove wreaths of straw and evergreen, lighting candles in each circle to welcome her light back into the world. It was believed that every flicker of flame on that night aided Sol in her journey, strengthening the sun's warmth for the seasons ahead. In these same lands, dream divination was common during midwinter. One might place grains of wheat beneath the pillow, whispering wishes for the year ahead. Others gazed into frozen water or polished metal, seeking visions of fortune or love. Dreams were considered messages, perhaps from ancestors, perhaps from the gods, perhaps from the self reborn with the sun. Elsewhere, in the highlands of what we now call Scotland, there was Sam Chalich, the winter hag, an aspect of the goddess Cailleach Burr, who ruled until the first shoots of spring. People believed she controlled the weather, sculpted the mountains, and tended the elements. To appease her, offerings of butter and bannock bread were left upon stone altars. When storms softened afterward, it was said that Cailleach was satisfied, resting once more within the hills. Across all these lands, one truth echoed. Winter was never only cold and hardship, it was sacred stillness, a time for tending the unseen. Communities drew closer, shared warmth and stories, and sought harmony with the powers that stirred quietly in the season's heart. Fire, light, evergreen, and song. These are the universal languages of hope. Each told the cosmos, we are still here. We believe the light will return. Even the act of cleaning before the solstice carried meaning, sweeping away stagnant energy, cleansing the home so that blessings could enter freely. Candles were lit in each window as a beacon, a guide for the returning sun and for ancestors finding their way back to the family. As the end of the long night approached, the people feasted, not in abundance, but in gratitude. Grain was precious, livestock dwindling, yet the act of sharing, however meager, was itself a ritual of faith and renewal. Songs rose in countless tongues, yet they whispered the same wish, that spring might come again and bring balance back to the world. And as they drifted to sleep beside the dying fire, they believed their dreams were sacred pathways, threads tying mortal breath to the turning of the stars. The heart of winter slowly begins to soften. The long nights remain, yet something subtle shifts in the air, a brightening beneath the horizon, a change in the scent of cold earth. Our ancestors knew the signs well. They watched the stars and knew when the light began its gentle climb back toward balance. In many ancient traditions, this period between midwinter and the first thaw was not idle time. It was the slow turning toward hope, a sacred transition honored through quiet rituals, purification, and prayer. Among the Celtic peoples, this season unfolded into the festival of Imbolc, marking the halfway point between winter solstice and spring equinox. The word comes from oimulc, meaning ewe's milk, for it was then that livestock began to birth their young, a sign that new life was stirring under the frozen soil. Imbolc was sacred to the goddess Brigid, patron of poetry, healing, fertility, and sacred fires. On Imbolc's Eve, ancient families would prepare by cleaning their hearts, symbolic of clearing away old energies, making space for renewal. They placed a bed of rushes or straw by the fire for Brigid's spirit to rest in, leaving out cloth or ribbons to be blessed by her passing. In the morning, these cloths were used through the year for protection and healing. Candles were lit in every window to represent Brigid's eternal flame, linking the hearth fire to the sun's rebirth, a ritual so enduring that its echo lives on in Candlemas, celebrated in later Christian tradition. As the frost began to retreat, festivals turned from stillness towards celebration of life's return. In Norse lands, Yule faded into the distance, a festival of women and ancestors, held when the first sunlight strengthened and the snow began to loosen its hold. Offerings were made to the Dazur, guardian spirits of family lines, to thank them for safe passage through the dark months. It was a time of renewal for the home as well as the spirit. Tools repaired, seeds sorted, candles remade. Each simple act an early promise to the spring that was waiting. Across Slavic regions, the waning of winter brought the ritual of Maslenitsa, or Butter Week, a celebration of warmth and abundance returning. People cooked golden pancakes, small circles of the sun, and share them with neighbors as blessings of light. Bonfires were once again kindled, and effigies of the frost goddess Morana were finally burned or drowned, symbolizing the farewell to death and the welcoming of the sun's power anew. Children sang songs to wake the fields, and laughter chased away the last of the cold. And in the Baltic lands, prayers to the sun goddess Sol continued through February. The first birds seen after the solstice were greeted with breadcrumbs and songs, for they were believed to carry messages between this world and the divine. Households practiced fire washing, passing torches around barns and homes to cleanse them from illness and ill fortune before the planting season began. Winter's end was spiritual renewal and also rebirth of the earth itself. Pagans saw no separation between soul and soil. To light a fire, to feed the hearth, to pour milk for the gods. These were not superstitions, but acknowledgments of their interwoven place in the pattern of the world. And so each year, as snow melted into water and rivers began to sing again, the people gave thanks. They thanked the darkness for shelter and introspection, and thanked the light for returning and breathing life once more. Now, as you rest and listen, feel that same rhythm moving quietly in your own heart, the turning between what sleeps and what awakens. From the still hearths of the Celts to the flame-bright halls of Norse Yule, from the icy Slavic plains to the Baltic fires, every tradition held fast to one simple truth. That winter, though cold, was never lifeless. It was the earth dreaming, and in that dream, humanity found belonging. When the sun finally rose higher each day, the festivals transformed again. The fires that began as small candles in deep winter became great spring bonfires. Food that had been portioned carefully through the cold would now be shared in abundance. And the stories, the myths of goddesses of the hearth, gods of renewal, and spirits of rain and grain would once again be told around open-air fires under lengthening days. The cycle had turned. The world exhaled. And the people began again. As you breathe, feel that same renewal flowing through time itself, century by century, life reawakening, the light always returning. Even now, the rituals live on in our candles, our evergreen trees, our feasts, our prayers, and our hope. Winter is not the end, but the cradle of a new beginning. Sleep now, and remember that every flame you carry, no matter how small, is part of that ancient light, the one our ancestors kept alive through every winter so that we might see another dawn. The wheel of the year always turns, but sometimes history turns with it. Over the centuries, the quiet fires of the old gods met the rising light of new faiths. And yet, the winter customs, the songs, the candles, the evergreens endured. Their roots grew deep into human memory, too meaningful to fade. As the Roman Empire turned toward Christianity, the ancient festival of Saturnalia still glowed within its cities. Even as new beliefs took hold, the people continued to light candles, give gifts, feast, and decorate with evergreen branches. These gatherings honored community, generosity, and rebirth, values that the new faith embraced in its own way. In time, the celebration of the Nativity quietly found its place near the old solstice. Around the same moment, the sun began to return. It was a time already rich with symbolism, light returning to the world after darkness, and the story of that divine light was woven into the familiar rhythms of the season. The evergreen tree, sacred since the earliest Norse and Celtic rites, was seen as a living reminder of endurance and life everlasting. Long before it sparkled with tinsel or lights, it stood decorated with fruits, candles, and ribbons, symbols of fertility and the promise of another year. The act of lighting a tree, of placing candles on living green, was not so different from those ancient fires kindled for Yule, meant to beckon warmth back to a sleeping world. In Northern Europe, Yule logs remain a powerful custom. A single great log, sometimes from the sacred oak, was burned slowly for days to bring fortune to the home. Ashes were kept for protection in the new year, and fragments from the fire were used to light the next year's log, a link between past and future, season to season. When Christian households adopted these traditions, the meaning endured, though the prayers might have changed. The Yule fire became a Christmas hearth fire. The evergreen garland became a wreath of hope. In this slow blending, old and new beliefs found peace beside each other. From Celtic lands, the goddess Bridget, keeper of fire, poetry, and healing, found new life as Saint Bridget, her feast day on February 1st still marking the turning towards spring. The candles lit for her at Imbolc became the fires of Candlemas, and people still carried her flame through generations, unaware that they were carrying one of the oldest symbols known to humankind, that of light reborn. Even the simple act of singing together, carols at doors, blessings at hearths, echoes ancient rituals once used to drive away winter spirits and call good fortune into homes. The melodies changed, but the purpose, shared warmth and goodwill, remained untouched. Many of the spirits once honored were softened, reimagined not as gods or goddesses, but as helpers, saints, or seasonal figures. Odin, the wanderer in his long blue cloak, riding the sky during the wild hunt, became faintly echoed in Father Christmas, the bringer of wisdom, gifts, and joy. He still traveled beneath the clouds, still carried a staff and the weight of winter's mystery. In the Slavic regions, Dead Moros, the frost grandfather, became a beloved winter figure even into modern times, a gift giver clothed in the colors of snow and twilight. And though his story changed with each century, his presence remained tied to the ancient reverence for frost, for winter's silent beauty, and for the balance between challenge and blessing. It is a quiet truth of history that even as beliefs transform, the soul of ritual endures. Every candle we light, each wreath we hang, every melodic prayer of peace in the darkest months, they are fragments of something far older, echoes of hands that once lifted evergreen boughs to the sky, of voices that once sang beside the solstice fire. The pagan and the sacred, the earthly and the divine, do not war within these traditions, they dance together. The human heart, always in awe of light and life, found endless ways to celebrate the returning sun. Today, millions still gather around bright fires, exchange gifts, share food, and tell stories when nights are long. And though the names of gods and saints have changed, the message beneath remains the same, that darkness is never endless and light, once kindled, never truly dies. The hearth, the candle, the song in winter's silence, they are all prayers reborn in different tongues. So as you close your eyes now, imagine those early fires burning still, on shores and in forests, in temples and cottages alike, each one a spark of the same living story, the story of humankind watching the dark sky and believing always in the light's return. And as you rest, let that ancient warmth fill you, the quiet strength of the earth beneath snow, the comfort of generations keeping vigil through the night, the endless rhythm of life and renewal. Sleep now, beneath the watch of stars that have looked upon every winter before this one, and every solstice that is yet to come. The seasons have turned, and the story circles back to where it began, with the whisper of snow, the glow of fire, and the gentle heartbeat of the earth. Since the first flames were kindled in caves and forests, human hands and hearts have sought the same comfort. Light in the dark, warmth in the cold, connection amid silence. That wish has never changed. From the sacred groves of the Celts to the Yule halls of the Norse, from the Baltic lanterns to the Slavic fires, each ritual was a promise, a vow whispered to time itself, that even in shadow, hope endures. Our ancestors watched the stars not only for guidance, but as reminders that they belong to something greater. In the endless turning of sun and moon, they saw the cycle that governs all things: birth, death, renewal, each following naturally after the other, as night follows day and spring follows snow. They learned to trust in that rhythm, and through their trust they found peace. The fire they tended was more than flame. It was belief made visible. When winter pressed hardest, when food was scarce and darkness long, they gathered, they shared, they sang. Rituals gave shape to meaning, turned survival into ceremony, and transformed fear into faith. And now you carry their memory. Each breath is part of that lineage, the unbroken tradition of watching, waiting, and welcoming the light. Those centuries have passed, and the names of the old gods may be quiet. Their essence still lives in each flame we light in winter, in every feeling of calm that comes when we pause to listen to the still world. The rituals of rest remain. They remind us to slow down, to honor endings as sacred beginnings, to see beauty even in dormancy. The pagans of long ago believed the universe itself was alive. Every tree, every stone, every river held a spark of spirit. And so, even now, when you breathe in cold air and feel it fill your chest, you are sharing one breath with the same world they honored, connected across time by the turning of seasons. Always, the lesson was the same. Life returns. Light returns. And so does peace if we make space to feel it. So, for a moment, let yourself rest in that understanding. Quiet joy of being part of a story so ancient that it has no beginning and no end. The earth sleeps. The stars keep watch. And somewhere beyond the mountains, a single spark of dawn begins to rise. Within that spark lives everything. The old songs, the green roots waiting under snow, and the light within you, the same light that the ancients once prayed to see again. This is winter's gift, to remind us of warmth by its absence, to let us dream so that, come morning, we awaken renewed. So breathe deeply now. Let your worries fall like snowflakes to the ground. Feel the steady heartbeat of all who came before you, and the gentleness of all who will come after. You are part of the same cycle, held in the same peace. Sleep, child of earth and light. Sleep in the safety of the turning world. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, and the story will begin again.